The neighbors intend to eat us. I'm Kane, 32 years old, have been married for 5 years, and I have a 3-year-old son. My small family lives in a peaceful neighborhood, in a well-appointed house that my spouse and I have worked hard for over the years. The area we live in still has quite a few houses that are unoccupied. One weekend, after returning from the supermarket, my wife announced some news with a tone of anticipation and excitement. We're going to have new neighbors soon. I saw 2 large moving trucks parked in the house across the street since early this morning. I wasn't as excited as my wife. For me, having neighbors or not makes no difference. I'm an introvert and don't enjoy socializing or meeting new people. By bedtime, I still saw the 2 trucks parked outside, and what was strange was that there were no homeowners in sight, only the movers still working. Do you think they have young children? My wife stood behind me, looking at the house across the street and whispered. I looked at her and then at the house, remaining silent. I hope so. That way our Roger will have someone to play with. The next morning I went downstairs, after getting ready. My wife was in the kitchen making breakfast, and our son was sitting very quietly at the dining table. The 3 of us started a new day happily, with cheerful laughter. Kane, what do you think about inviting our new neighbors over for dinner? Dinner? But we don't know anything about them yet. I met Brenna, the owner of the house, this morning, and she's very friendly. My wife was very excited about having new neighbors. She suggested the dishes she would prepare for dinner. She even imagined what the future would be like with our 2 families being close. I definitely didn't like this at all. Not because I'm worried about the food or anything else. It's just that sitting down to eat and talk with a stranger is really difficult for me. Alright then, later, you'll go over to the neighbor's house to introduce yourself and invite them, okay? My wife is always like that, making decisions without considering how I feel. I kept delaying the introduction until that afternoon. By the time my wife was about to lose her patience, I finally got up from my seat and went over to the neighbor's house. After knocking twice, a woman whom I guessed was Brenna opened the door and greeted me very warmly. Hello, my spouse and I just moved in. Is there something you need? I'm Kane. I live in a house across the street. Oh, so you're Aurora's husband. Nice to meet you. I could sense that Brenna shared some of my wife's traits, cheerful and friendly. But it also took quite a while for me to make the invitation. My family would like to prepare dinner at our house so that we can get to know each other better. Sure, my spouse and I will come. How about this Friday evening? For me, any day worked. I agreed with Brenna. Before leaving, I took a brief glance inside their house, just by accident. On the sofa, there was a man reading a magazine, probably the husband Brenna mentioned. I found something very strange about him, and also about Brenna. I'm not sure what it was. Finally, the Friday I was dreading arrived. My wife prepared a sumptuous meal and got formal outfits ready for our son and me to welcome the guests. At exactly 6 p.m., Brenna and her husband arrived, bringing along a small dog, a bottle of wine, and some cold cuts. Hello, this is Dominic, my husband, and this is Hack. It's great to have your family over for dinner. Brenna greeted us cheerfully while Dominic was quite indifferent. He's probably an introvert like me, but with an added touch of aloofness. The dinner unfolded with 2 contrasting states. My wife and Brenna chatted and laughed happily, while Dominic and I focused on eating in silence. I also tried to strike up a conversation with him a few times, but all I received in response were cold, sharp glances. He wasn't inclined to chat, but also didn't take his gaze off me. After about 30 minutes of the meal, which felt like 3 hours to me, I was on the verge of freezing up from discomfort. It didn't end there. After the meal, we sat on the sofa to have dessert. My wife proudly mentioned that she had researched and made the pumpkin pie recipe herself, and Brenna was very impressed. "I'm impressed with the meat," Dominic said. His gaze was still fixed on me. "He's complimenting your cooking skills, Aurora," Brenna said. The two women returned to the kitchen to share cooking tips with each other, leaving me feeling awkward and tense, my whole body stiffening. I didn't dare look at Dominic anymore, so I turned to pet Hack and play with my son. The sound of Dominic placing his plate on the table indicated that he had finished his dessert. Out of courtesy, I hesitantly asked him if he would like some more pie or tea. "I'm curious. I wonder what your meat will taste like," Dominic said. My body was enveloped in a sense of shock and fear. Seeing Dominic's insinuating smile, I stood up angrily and shouted at him, "Are you out of your mind?" My wife and Brenna rushed over, anxiously asking what had happened. I felt like my limits were being tested as the neighbor continued to stare at me with an amused smile. I clenched my fists in anger, unsure whether he didn't understand or was intentionally pretending not to. Brenna and my wife seemed like the spokespeople for both of them. The two women kept apologizing and thanking each other. Brenna hugged Hack and then led her husband back home. After they left, I still couldn't calm down. My emotions were very chaotic and uncomfortable. My wife is waiting for me to calm down before asking about everything clearly. Of course, my wife will believe what I say. She reacted with surprise to anger. At this moment, I am the one calming and advising my wife to stay calm. My wife and I didn't manage to sleep until 2 a.m. The next morning, my wife still got up very early. I went downstairs and was surprised to see my wife's rather uncomfortable and angry state. She was heading towards the front door. I watched my wife and was alarmed to realize that she was heading towards the neighbor's house across the street. Brenna was also at the door, and the two of them were talking about something. I hurried over to my wife and grabbed her hand. "Your husband's words yesterday made us a bit concerned. He was probably just joking, right?" "No, he wasn't joking," Brenna said with a knowing smile. Her words left my wife and me speechless. "We will enjoy each member of your family in turn, starting with him, then you, and also..." My wife angrily shouted at Brenna, stopping the disgusting line of thought and the mention of our son's name coming from her mouth. My wife and I seriously urged Brenna's family to stop this cruel joke and leave. We closed the door, but Brenna still stood there, looking at us and smiling.